Hey, good evening, everybody. So glad y'all could join us tonight. I'm Keith Shelton, my co-presenter, producer, uh, maker of all things. Where is she?
They
There she is. Hey.
That's called the chief bottle washer.
Well, we're glad to be back. We're glad y'all have joined us. Already starting with a good crowd tonight. Thank y'all so much. Glad to be back. We needed the break. Very quickly, I want to tell you this. Um, just one thing or another was just um, we just didn't want to try to do less than uh, stellar job, and so that's why we said let's just take a break between Thanksgiving and New Year's. And so thank y'all for being patient.
That
Thank y'all
that
for
puts us the pressure on us to do a stellar job now, Keith.
well, based on what you've put together and
Lo
based on what I've put
always
together.
always lowball it, and then they
Okay.
can be pleasantly surprised. We gonna do
Uh,
the best we can.
okay. Under promise and over deliver. I like that.
That's
So,
right, and
okay.
we did not stop studying just because we stopped presenting, so hopefully, we've got some stuff to bring to you, but every time I think I know what we're gonna talk about, we learn something new, have to stick in there, and God wants what he wants. Do what we'll just try to be obedient and faithful.
Yeah. Well, us very quickly do an overview tonight. Number one, hey, Wanda, in Biloxi this evening. Glad
Yeah,
y'all could join us.
that's cool.
Uh, we're resuming where we were. Hey, Landon in Lubbock. Uh,
She got
we
her little
are,
baby boy is that's not what she calls her fiance. That's actually her little dog. Okay.
yeah. We're going to pick up where we left off before the holidays. We're starting at Matthew chapter 23, and Sonara's going to, she's going to carry the line of that, and I'll jump in where I'm needed. And but then I promise y'all a very very hard hitting creation corner tonight, and when we hit creation corner, first thing out of my mouth is make sure all the children are put to bed because it's going to be a hard hitting creation corner tonight. I promised you that. Several of you have mentioned it to me over the holidays, and so it's going to be out, and I believe it will be. So take it away, beautiful.
So we are tonight finished. We finished up chapter 22 before the end of the year. So happy New Year, everybody! And then we are just going right into 23 because this just reads like one story. There's no break here. This is all happening, one thing after the other. So they put the chapter break in here, but this is just the next continuation of what's going on with Jesus. Where he's gone from being judged to a judge. You remember last time that they had all the, eh, you know, everybody got together and teamed up against him. Unlikely partners.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to take Jesus out. He's got to go. They have things the way they want it, and they're comfortable with that, and they do not want anything to change. So they start setting traps, Keith. They're setting the
Mm-hmm.
traps. They have got there's basically 4 traps that they set, and the people who set them are in weird leagues with each other. The first one they try to say, by whose authority are you doing all these things? Who told you could heal these people? Who told you you could, preach this? But the chief priests and elders pretty much are the ones who set that trap that failed. And if you didn't see the last podcast, we won't go through all this. Go back and watch it. But then the imperial tax issue, the Pharisees and the Herodians got together, which were normally not friendly.
No, no, no,
No,
no. We
they,
covered why, and
mhm,
so we're not going to cover it again tonight. Go ahead.
yep. but they were unsuccessful as well. Jesus said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God." And he blew them away with that answer. So, and then third, the trap was the resurrection. The whose wife will she be? 7 brothers, blah blah blah, and which is so crazy because guess what the Sadducees don't believe in? The resurrection. And that was the very trap they thought they were gonna sarcastically, you know, make Jesus look bad with. Didn't work. And then number 4, the Pharisees, they thought they had this great theological question that they could ask him. They saw him shut down the Pharisees, so they thought they were gonna jump up in there. And, this is definitely the Southern version of Matthew chapter 22, I'm sorry. But, which commandment is the greatest? And Jesus wrapped it all up. He wrapped it all up for them and basically said, everything in the law is about loving God and loving people. And
Yep.
he messed up their plans again. So then he kind of flips the courtroom there at the end of chapter 22 after they've done all that. And because they thought they could force him into an answer that they could use to make him what we've been calling arrestable. They needed a reason to arrest him. They needed him to answer in a way that would break with their law so they could, throw it up and get him arrested. And he asked them, what do you think about the Messiah? Whose son is he? And then you can go back and look at that. The son of David, they replied. And he said, how is it then that David, speaking by the Spirit, calls him Lord? For he says, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. And if David calls him Lord, how can he be his son? This is such a brilliant way that he answered this because, the Pharisees, and they used the Torah. And if it wasn't in the Torah, they didn't want to hear it. But he actually uses the Torah to prove, their misunderstanding of who the Messiah even is. So they were silenced. The word in Hebrew, one of the words is muzzled. They were shut down. Nobody could say a word in reply. And from that day on, no one dared to ask him any more questions. So we've gotten to this turning point now, and Jesus has gone from judged Jesus to judge Jesus. Not to be confused with Judge Judy. This is Judge Jesus. Jesus is judging. After chapter 22, Jesus stops answering their questions and he begins with his accusations. And we're not going to get to the woes today because there's so much before that, but you will recognize some of these verses. Woe to you, Pharisees, hypocrites, blind guides. You've heard these before. We're going to get to those next week. But first, he turns to the crowds and to his disciples, Keith. And he says this. He says, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads, put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. And what have we said, Keith? What have we said all along from the 95 podcasts we've done? If there's something in there, slow down and look at it.
Strange or unusual in the Bible.
Fly past it, because how many times have I read this? But my first question here was, it says the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. Points to consider. Many Pharisees were also teachers of the law, but not all teachers of the law were Pharisees. So Jesus is talking about two distinct groups of people, actually. So if you want to think about this in the right way, you're thinking teachers of the law is kind of a professional role, and then the Pharisees is a theological movement. So that just alone, slow down and look at that. The other thing that was so interesting to me is I was like, what is Moses' seat? And you hear this more than once. Do you know, Keith, that there was actually such a thing as a Moses seat?
That's awesome.
These are archaeological finds of Moses seats. They would be around the tabernacle area. They were actually sat in by the person who was teaching the law. There is such a thing. They have many different examples of this. This is something that we can actually point to in archaeology to prove what the Bible says. And it's not a metaphor. It's not just a metaphor, okay? And so there's this one in particular has an inscription on it. Then I can tell you what that means here in just a minute. And then on the far right, you're going to see an image that was found with just rich with temple
Imagery.
because this was something that was continued on and on and on. That you see the menorahs, you can examine this more closely if you have time, which is interesting by itself. But what happened in the seat? From the Moses seat, the Torah was read, legal decisions were explained, interpretations were authoritatively given. Like when you were in the Moses seat, you were supposed to be in the place of Moses. Oral tradition was often added. And this is why, because you're saying Jesus says, do everything they tell you. Why is he telling you that? Because it's obviously kind of he's getting on to, he's warning, he's saying, don't do this, do everything they tell you, because they were reading Moses. They were reading the law. Okay. That's still God's word. That's why he can say, do everything they tell you. But because that represented Moses' authority, right? But the men sitting in it, they didn't carry Moses' character. They did not imitate Moses' humility. They did not shepherd the people like Moses did.
No.
That's where Jesus is going with this. The bottom line is they sat where Moses sat, but they didn't stand where Moses stood.
No.
That's like something that'd preach right there. That would preach. So make no mistake, the Moses seat wasn't just furniture. I'm not saying that that's what that means. It was a claim. It was a claim. And when Jesus spoke, he wasn't denying the seat existed. He was questioning whether Moses would even recognize the men that were sitting in it.
Exactly.
That's what Jesus is talking about. So he comes to the next part and says, everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. All right, we got to slow down. We got to slow down again, Keith. What in the world is a phylactery? So I'm going to show you what a phylactery is. Does anybody know what a phylactery is before I do that? I just want you. Okay. These are phylacteries, and they're small leather boxes that contain scripture scrolls. They're bound to the arm and to the forehead. Now, where did this come from? This comes from the book of Deuteronomy 6:6-8, and the book of Exodus. So the whole idea behind this, and I think I explained this a little bit. Here's some more pictures. These are modern day pictures of phylacteries and tassels. So they actually wear them on the front of their head and on their arm. And inside of these, there are these little, you can see, I wish you could see my mouse, I'm pointing, but there are little slots for 4 different scrolls. And there are 4 in there. I'll tell you which ones they are. The book of Exodus 13, 1-10, which is about God's deliverance from Egypt, obedience remembered. Okay. And then the book of Exodus 13, 11-16, redemption of the firstborn, the power of God's hand, the action of God, the power. And then the book of Deuteronomy, the Shema, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You may recognize some of these. In the book of Deuteronomy, which is, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way, which is tied to obedience from the heart. So if anybody wants to do a deep dive into those scriptures, those are the ones that are in the phylacteries that are worn on the head and the hand. And the theme is deliverance, oneness, commandments, obedience from mind and heart. And then the tassels are worn on the corners of the garments, supposed to be a visible reminder of God's commandments. And the biblical origin for that is book of Numbers 15:37-41, that you may look at them and remember all the commandments of the Lord. Here's a picture of this would be the actual tassels on the left, and then how they're placed on the garment, on the right. Because Jesus judges the heart. What was meant to remind the wearer, it became a way to impress the observer. The longer tassels, look how devoted I am. Look how long my tassels are, Keith. Jesus is judging the heart here. He's not saying there's anything wrong with the tassels. It's biblical. It was written. These are heart matters he's talking about. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth father, for you have one Father and he is in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. How many times just recently in recent podcasts have we talked in Matthew about this is a underlying theme, and humbling yourself and not putting yourself in high places, and just the appearance of religion, on and on and on. Because what he's doing here, in my opinion, is he's taking away the hierarchy. He's making disciples of all. You're not called to be rabbi. You have one teacher. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled.
And he was being attacked by group after group after group who exalted themselves. Mm-hmm. That was the problem.
Exactly. He tears down, and I used a big word, but religious stratification. Think of the stratosphere up into, simply put, religion had become a ladder, a social ladder,
a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. And Jesus replaces it with shared discipleship. He takes status and turns it into relationship. He takes authority, he turns it into service. Greatness, he turns it into humility.
Yeah, let me say, you want to show me your status? Show me your relationship. You want to show me your authority? I want to see service. You want to show me your greatness? I want to see humility. That's basically how he's presenting it.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. Oh, well, I thought that was going to take a lot longer because you usually talk a lot more. So I guess we better go back and talk about some of this a little bit. But, just the being in the way that they worked it to have all the best seats to be seen, because when you were seen sitting in certain seats, that was a sign of your status, your authority, your greatness, right there. They worked it out and fought over who was going to sit where. Remember all the parables we've seen up until this point, where Jesus said, "Don't sit at the head of the table and be asked to move. Sit at the back and be brought up. Humble yourself. Be humble. Don't think so highly of yourselves." Jesus didn't want that.
And also, don't think laterally. Think vertically. Whatever you do, don't think how man's going to observe you. Think of how God's going to observe you and receive you. It was throughout the Gospels that Jesus was trying to teach these principles. Just It was all about relationship. You remember Isaiah chapter 1, he says, I hate religion. And in Micah 6:6-8, Micah is just, I mean, he is absolutely beside himself because he just feels like the Lord, that the nation of Israel has sinned so bad that,
Mm-hmm.
that, God doesn't even acknowledge it. He doesn't even look their direction anymore. And so Micah is basically saying, God, what can we do? What can we do so that we can get back in your good graces, that you'll show favor to it? Can we do this? Can we do that? And everything he named was a religious rite, a religious action. And the worst one of all is when he says, can I give you my firstborn? Well, oh my God. I mean, that shows how desperate Michael was. But that's the worst thing he could have tried to offer God, was offering up his firstborn. I mean, we know that because we've covered that before.
Well, we
But
covered that, and we also talked about just how that seems crazy to us, but there were common practices back then, pagan
oh
wise,
yeah,
that was supposed to grant, curry a lot of favor with the gods to do something like that.
yeah, and that's why
And
God said, I mean, in Deuteronomy, I believe it might have been Leviticus. He said, "Do not do like the pagans around you do."
mhm,
So Micah knew that he he is really about to mess up, but he did it anyway. That's how desperate Micah was for religion to be the solution. He wanted religion to get God's attention. He wanted religion to be the formula. And then how did God respond? He didn't even address the religion. He said, I have shown you, oh man, what is good. I want you to love mercy. I want you to do justice. And I want you to walk humbly with your God. How
mhm,
simple is that? And then when you couple it with the chapter 1 of Isaiah, he's making it clear it's relationship, not religion. Relationship, not religion. And when Jesus gets here, the Messiah, who had been promised from eons and eons back, foretold, going to be not only for the Jews, but for the Gentiles as well. It says Messiah is going to bring about everything new. He's going to restore. You got to remember this. And I guess we're leading up to the creation corner. But remember, God created mankind, and mankind is a special creation of God. He already had all the angels he wanted. He didn't create any more angels. He said, let us make man in our image. So humankind is something that was uh, out beyond what he already had. We were a special creation, and he wanted to be the God of all mankind. And we're the ones that kept giving in to temptation and that sort of thing. And so he knew that he was going to have to send that Messiah one day to reclaim all the world. And here's Jesus making it clear that over the places in the Old Testament where I made it clear, I hate religion. I don't want that to be what you think you have to do forever. I hate religion. I want relationship. And then here's Jesus doing it. Jesus personifying it. Jesus preaching it. Jesus trying to teach it. And
well,
some
Jesus is
got it and
not
some
only
didn't.
just creating disciples here in this particular chapter. Jesus is beginning to speak from the perspective of a prophet. He's speaking prophetically because he's about to start handing out the woes. But this particular time, he is turning to his people that are following him, the crowd of people that follow him, his disciples, and he's telling them how to do it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, he's telling them how not to do it, but he's telling them how to do it. But
Well, and
he's about to say, woe unto you who, and these things are going to come true, that he says, and it's from the Psalms. I mean, he's pulling things out, scripture when he starts
yes.
talking about all that. And there is a very interesting study, which we may get into a little bit, where Jesus is actually you can tie this into the Sermon on the Mount, in
Mhm.
chapter 5, where it's almost mirroring, what's going on there.
Yeah,
And
well,
so,
he's connecting. He's in some
mhm.
cases he's making the point. He made the point in chapter 5, and he's giving you the antecedent to it
I was
in
gonna say, it's
chapter
kinda like there's
23.
2 sides to every point.
Major,
There's
yeah,
the do and there's the don't.
yeah.
There's the so you can see all that. His message is the same. His message is consistently the same. It's not that he needs to really,
Well, and
expand anything, but
you remember how many times we've tried to say in the Bible, there are so many times where there are patterns, there are f- forms and foreshadowings and types and shadows. And if you remember, when they assemble the tribes, um, on the two hillsides, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. You had the Mount of blessings and the Mount of curses. And it was, if you do so and so, you'll be blessed. But if you don't do so and so, you're going to be cursed. And you remember that, how that went back and forth. We covered that back many, many podcasts ago. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Matthew chapter 5, Jesus is trying to talk about, what it takes to become a member of the kingdom of heaven. But the kingdom of heaven is like so and so, and he raised the bar in Matthew chapter 5. Well, Matthew chapter 23, after this part, you're going to see he really came down on those who didn't. So,
yeah. And Keith, I mean, he's how can I say this? Today's disciple, it's a slippery slope. You can become tomorrow's Pharisee.
oh my gosh, what a fabulous statement! What a
And
fabulous statement!
and you
Yeah.
can see that happening with people because systems themselves don't corrupt people. You can have a system and your heart be in the right place. But, people's desires and what they do with those systems, that's what Jesus is talking about. You could see that with the Moses seat by itself. You can say, he says they sit in the Moses seat. In other words, they're sitting under the authority of Moses. They're reading the word. Do that. But don't do what they do. Don't do it the way they're doing it. The
Right.
way they're where they're coming from. Now he's saying that you can come from a wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
This is about the heart. I'm gonna quit talking about that. I know you got some stuff you want to talk about.
Well, we can.
So let's see. We will come back if anybody has any questions or anything too. We will be glad to hear about that. But right now, let's do this.
Okay.
Oh, here you go. You got some things you wanted to go to here.
Yep.
I think you've got your slides on or at the very end though. So let me help you just a little bit. Okay. I was doing it for you, but okay.
That's okay. Okay.
There we go.
I'm going to remind everybody, last time before we broke for the holidays, I told y'all I was going to give you a really good presentation on evolution. I made the plain statement. I stick by it. I'm more convicted of it now than I ever have been in my life. Evolution came straight from Satan. I don't even, I'm ready to debate anybody who wants to challenge me. Prove me wrong is what I'm going to tell you. In the Hebrew language, there was no word. I'm sorry, there was no proper name for Satan. Satan. I don't know if y'all knew that or not. It was the common Hebrew word Satan, which meant opposer one who opposes, adversary. And if you've done any study, if you followed us at all, the scriptures we've covered about Satan and who he is, and uh, Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28, um, Job, the first few, I think it's like the first chapter of Job. Then obviously you've got Genesis chapters 1 through 3, especially Genesis 3:15. You know, we've covered all this. We've covered all this. Uh, Satan loves nothing better than to oppose God. He wants to counterfeit God. He wants his counterfeiting to be so good that he thinks he can replace God in the lives of human beings. And we've covered all that. Well, that's who Satan is. And when I tell you that evolution came straight from Satan, uh, after tonight, and I'm not going to beat around the bush now. I half jokingly said, you may want to put the kids to bed, because this is going to be covering some tough stuff, and I'm going to be willing to bet, and you are free to put in the comments. I'm going to be willing to bet. I'm going to show you some things that you have never had presented to you before. You've never seen these quotes. You didn't know this stuff was written down. You didn't know this stuff was in books and pamphlets and museums and things like that. Some of what I'm going to show you. And it's going to show you just how evil and sadistic and straight from hell evolution is, and how it's been used to bring us to where we are today in our modern world. And I'm saying, here's what I'm going to say before we start through the slides. Sonar and I both have said, if you do not have Genesis 1, chapters 1 through 11 as your foundational understanding of your worldview, then you are at odds with us. And don't feel bad. Don't feel strange. I'm not going to get mad at you. Here's what I'm going to tell you. We used to be there. Sonar, you've heard us talk about the fact that Sonar and I used to try to, okay, well, God said he created the earth in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh. Well, but we got, our science books and our teachers and our museums tell us, millions and millions and millions of years, and the universe is billions with a B, in age. And
well, we were both, Keith. We were both academically inclined. Don't let the southern accents fool you.
Yeah, we made a lot of good scores in our day. Yeah.
Yeah, but we felt like we had to marry what was in the science books with our faith.
Yeah.
And we tried very hard to do that because we weren't going to give up our faith. So we felt like we had to make it fit. And
there you go.
That's the bottom line.
And what I'm saying is Sonar and I no longer promote that. No, Sonar and I no longer.
We're not under delusions. I don't believe anymore.
No, we're not under delusions anymore. So let's get kicked off. It's going, it's probably going to be very eye opening to you. Let's start off with this. This is what the Apostle Paul said in the book of Acts, chapter 17. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needs anything, since he himself gives to all mankind, life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. That's obviously a reference to the condition of the world at the time of Jesus, but it refers back to the Tower of Babel, which is Genesis chapter 11, when languages were confused and the people groups were scattered because God had told Adam and Eve, he told Noah and his sons, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. And 3 times they rebelled and wouldn't do it. So God finally said, I'm going to make it happen. And he did. Okay. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. My days were ordained before the first of my days ever came to be. That's Proverbs 139, 13 through 16. And y'all know we have taught that mankind was God's special creation. We've also taught you that womankind is like super special of God's creation. We've taught that. And we didn't teach it because that's what we wanted it to be. We showed you where it came out of Scripture. Okay? But God's special creation has been under attack ever since. Serpent showed up in Eden, tempted Eve, tempted Adam, and messed up. Then you had the Genesis 6 fiasco of the fallen angels, the angels who sinned, which were referred to by Peter and Jude. And then you had the Tower of Babel, where they had to be scattered. Well, that was supernaturally influenced as well. And so all through history of mankind, and we've covered this, all through the history of mankind, Satan has wanted to destroy. First, he wanted to make sure that Messiah was never going to be born. And then when he messed that up and couldn't keep the Messiah from being born, he was going to try to kill him. Well, he got that done, but he really didn't kill him. He just killed the body. And then God raised the body, put it back with Jesus' spirit, and then brought Jesus back to life. For 40 days, he traversed Jerusalem, Judea, Galilee, showed himself to over 500 witnesses, according to the Apostle Paul. And then he ascended to heaven. Well, Satan knew he was beat. He knew that he didn't make that happen like he thought he was going to. And so ever since, he has been trying his best to keep as many human souls from making their way to heaven as he possibly can. The more lives he can destroy, the happier he is. A lot of times it's through deception. A lot of times it's through influencing the right people. Let's get started. How many ever seen phrases like that right there? Higher races, lower races, primitive races, advanced races, white race, black race, oriental race, civilized races, savage races, uncivilized races. You've seen those phrases. You've heard them in textbooks. You've heard them in PBS videos, Smithsonian videos, in museums even, okay? And you're going to be shocked in this day and
Hey,
age.
I do want to just say that people our age have heard these more than young people. I
Oh,
think a
yeah.
lot of this has been sanitized and hidden way more in today's age than it was when we were growing up. This is common. This is common when we were growing up for sure.
It very much was. And here's
Mhm.
the thing. You're going to learn before we finish tonight that it's still there.
It's still there.
It's just not front and center. And there's a
Exactly.
reason why it's still there. And I'm telling you,
It doesn't have to be front and center anymore. You're gonna tell them why. Go
yes.
ahead.
Now, I'm going to make a flat statement. Darwinian evolution cannot be changed. They cannot change the aspect of Darwinian evolution that brought this about. Now, they don't put it on TV. They don't put it in the news. They don't put it in the People magazine anymore. Okay, but how many times have people, when they think they're in private, they say very racist things. They say very sexist things. They just things that nobody should be saying. Okay,
Go
it's
ahead and
because they.
start because I feel like you're gonna make this point way better with a little information, a little
Okay,
background.
okay. Let me say this. I'm going to make an admission. I'm going to confess to something. I have my prejudices. I'm 69 years old. I have my prejudices. Okay. I'm prejudiced against bullies. I'm prejudiced against people who won't take advantage of advantages that they're given. I'm prejudiced against lazy people. I'm prejudiced against people who want to live off other people's efforts. Okay. But here's something else I'm going to tell you. I have my prejudices, but my prejudices have nothing to do with skin color because my Bible teaches me, and it's now been confirmed by scientific DNA evidence, there is one race of human being.
Mm-hmm.
We're all the same race. Okay. We're all descended from two squeezings of ancestry. One, Adam and Eve. The second, Noah and his wife. Okay. That's the two. And the DNA that, and I told you, I think I told you all this a time or two before. You know what the biologist who study DNA and ancestry anthropologists. Anthropologists have said through studying mitochondrial DNA that there is a single woman from which we're all descended. All mankind is descended from this single woman. They call her, guess what? Eve. Now they do it derisively. They do it as a satirical,
Like a joke.
like a joke, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what they call her. They call her Eve. How about that? How about that, friends and relatives?
Well, that's good because that was her name.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's not their intention. So
No,
go ahead.
that wasn't their intention.
Mm.
But that's not the way it's been. That's not the way it's been since. What do these people all have in common? Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Benito Mussolini, Mao Zedong, Francis Galton, Margaret Sanger. What do all these people have in common? Well, they have several things in common. One of which is they believed that Charles Darwin was one of their favorite authors that they had studied and read. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they, through let's just say the last 200 years of world history, they have brought about the largest destruction of humankind ever. Okay, we're talking about in the case of Margaret Sanger, the chief proponent of Planned Parenthood and birth control and abortion. I mean, you're talking about anywhere from 40 to 60 million a year just in this country alone, not even counting worldwide. Okay. Mao Zedong, exterminated, in his, I can't remember what the term was. And then Lenin and Stalin had huge purges in their communist countries that kill tens of millions in a very short time. Okay. But guess who they believe to be their thought leader? Charles Darwin. I'm going to show you why in just a minute. And they believed that it was biologically provable that everybody that they thought that needed to be exterminated deserved to be killed. All right. I want y'all to look as best you can at the book on the left, The Origin of the Species. Well, guess what? That wasn't the full title of that book when it was first published. Now, if you were to try to go to Amazon and order a book called The Origin of Species, you know what book you'd probably get? You would get the exact same book, but the title would read just The Origin of Species. Mm-hmm. But let me do my best to try to find for you so I can read it. The Origin of Species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. That was the actual title of the book. And what was contained in the book will blow your mind.
Mm.
Now, on the right, now remember that book came out in 1859. Slavery in the United Kingdom, the British speaking world, slavery in the British speaking world had ended like 10, 15, maybe 20 years before that book came out. The book on the right is called The Descent of Man. Let me see if I can give you what the full title of that book is. Now, again, if you wanted to order the book right now, the only thing you would get is The Descent of Man. But the actual title was The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex.
That's the name it's showing on there, too. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Well, I didn't know if everybody could read it because it's hard for me to read. But anyway, those were two books written by Charles Darwin. The first one came out in 1859. The second one came out in 1870 something. And those dates are important. The second book, which is where Charles Darwin really went to town with his racist, unbelievably evil notions, was published in the 1870s. And that's like 5 years, 5 to 10 years after the Emancipation Proclamation in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go on.
Which he'd probably been writing that for some time because he started with the first book and then he just made the leap to humans from the animal kingdom to humans with that book.
You got to remember his trip on the I believe it was the HMS Beagle to the Galapagos Islands. That's where he first started, calling himself a scientist, and he was trying to, make sense of things that he saw. That happened in the 1830s. And so you're right. He wrote and he wrote and he wrote some more since he got back from that trip. And he was trying to talk about, the origin of the species and he came up with this word of evolving and evolution, and this is where the need for millions and millions of years came from, because it had to be random. It had to be without any plan or design and things like that. Well, all that was developed since the 1840s to the 1859 when he first wrote that book. Now let's
read this. This is page 336 in Charles Darwin's The Descent of Man.
Yes. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man, there's that phrase, civilized races of man, will almost certainly exterminate and replace there's another
just keep
term,
reading.
Savage races throughout the world. At the same time, the anthropomorphous apes will no doubt be exterminated. And what is meant by anthropomorphous apes, he was referring to the Aborigines in Australia, the natives in Africa. That's who they were referring to as anthropomorphous apes. That these were, in some ways, they were human-like, but they weren't really human because they were just 2 steps above, a baboon or a orangutan, okay, will no doubt be exterminated. The break between man and his nearest allies will then be wider, for it will intervene between man and a more civilized state, as we may hope, even than the Caucasian and some ape as low as a baboon, instead of as now between the Negro or Australian Aborigine and the gorilla. In other words, he was saying that the distance between the gorilla and the Australian Aborigine or the Negro in Africa was not very wide. But over time, those would be exterminated, because that's just the way evolution works. That's just the natural order of things. And so the distance between man in a more civilized state, as we may hope, even than the Caucasian, in other words, the Caucasian and some ape as low as the baboon. That difference.
Keith, you can just read one sentence here and it explains it all. The civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. That's it.
Where did he get that idea? Who gave him that idea?
That came straight from hell.
How many of you are shocked that that phrase is literally written by Charles Darwin in his book, Descent of Man? How many of you ever read Descent of Man? How many of you ever read The Origin of the Species? Well, let me assure you.
Nobody's reading this. They're hearing that Charles Darwin discovered evolution. That's all they know. They don't know this. This is his book. This is him. This is where this is all coming from.
But I'm fixing to show you there were people reading him.
Yeah, there were. Yeah, I don't mean that.
That's the scary part.
I'm just saying by the time it got to us, it was just so indoctrinated into the culture, into the school books. And I mean, how did it get there? How did it even get there?
Well, I'm fixing to show you.
Go ahead.
This is Stephen Jay Gould, who was writing in the 70s. He is an ardent evolutionist, but I'm going to tell you that, and he's godless. He's an avowed atheist, but he is one of the most, let me say, transparent evolutionists out there, and he's basically calling it like it is. In 1977, here's what he wrote. Biological arguments for racism may have been common before 1850, but they increased by orders of magnitude following the acceptance of evolutionary theory. Now, think about this. Before 1850, and the reason he's referring to 1850 because Charles Darwin's book came out in 1859. Now, Charles Darwin had written some things that was published, that was circulated during the 1850s, and it was pressure on him to hurry up and get his book out, or he was going to lose out as being the father of evolution. But he was writing some things, and he was promoting some things, and he was spreading the notion of this evolutionary theory as far as the animal kingdom went. And so that's why he's making reference to that 1850. But they increased by orders of magnitude following the acceptance of evolutionary theory. In other words, you might have had a crackpot here or there, but Charles Darwin dropped the hammer. He dropped the hammer. And like I said, 1859, that was 20 years after slavery had been abolished in the UK, in the British Commonwealth. Okay,
Keith, why was Charles Darwin's work so readily accepted, and why was he regarded highly enough for anybody to pay any attention to what he was saying?
Sweetie, Genesis 3:15.
That's all.
Satan
That's the only explanation.
Exactly. And I have said it time and time again. Whenever human behavior ceases to make sense, always think in terms of a spiritual
warfare.
Spiritual warfare going on behind the scenes.
I agree.
Let's go to the next one. This is a classroom. By the looks of it, I would say it's a college classroom. Look what's on the board. This is the science being taught. Science of the day, the established science of the day. You know, we've been told, you got to believe the science, got to believe the science. Well, this is the science from back in this day. Okay.
This had to be in the 40s or 50s.
Oh no, it's well before that.
Really?
Well before that.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I'm just looking at the haircuts and the furniture, and I mean, it's definitely not 60s or 70s. I mean, it's way before that. Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
I'm going to.
It's all men too, so you know.
Well, and that's why I say it's probably a college classroom.
Right.
Thomas Huxley, he has been referred to as Charles Darwin's bulldog.
Okay.
I've never
heard of him.
What did I say a while ago? You don't know people were writing these things. You don't know people were pushing these things. You didn't know that these were intellectuals. These were godless, Marxists, atheists, communists, socialists, people who jumped on what Charles Darwin wrote, and they started pushing it. And they read what he says: no rational man, cognizant of the facts, cognizant of the settled
It
science,
understands the facts,
yes,
is aware of the
believes,
facts.
yes, believes that the average Negro is the equal, still less the superior, of the white man. Thomas Huxley wore the label proudly of quote, Charles Darwin's bulldog. Remember, he's godless. Anything that you have no idea how bad Christians were starting to catch grief about this time, because they would speak out against slavery. They would
That's
speak
what I
out
was going
against.
to say. Was there no one standing up in the church and saying, "You people are godless"? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
because they had to be, right. They weren't like claiming to be Christian men, were they?
No, he acknowledged he didn't believe in
Oh,
God.
they were they were proud atheists. Okay,
Exactly. Okay, and proud evolutionist.
okay, okay.
Such racist mythology did not play a determining role in the perception of non-Europeans by Europeans until the triumph of the theory of organic evolution in Darwin's. Now he says it wrong. He says ascent of man, but he means the descent of man in 1859, and its extension by analogy into early developmental anthropology. This became the science.
Okay,
They were.
tell me.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to read this. I'm trying to read this. Such racist mythology did not play a determining role in the understanding of
Non-Europeans, meaning non-whites,
by Europeans until the triumph of the theory of organic. Okay, so this racist mythology was a direct result of Darwin's Descent of
theory.
Man. Okay,
Yes. Now
okay.
think about it. What Darwin wrote about survival of the fittest, uh, 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 evolution. Things change over time, and it's always an improvement. Um,
So who is Leslie Fieldler? He's
he's
obviously
he's an anthropologist, but again,
that
I'd have to go back and look and tell you.
was he trying to push back against
No,
evolution here?
no, he was just. It
Or
seemed to me
he was championing it. He was saying, "We finally understand this." Is that what he's saying here?
right, right.
Okay.
He's all right,
We're
and
coming up on an hour, so I'm trying to push you on a little bit.
I know. Darwin's evolution that he applied to all of the animal kingdom.
Mhm.
Everybody who was atheistic, anti-God, sold to Satan, they're saying, okay, well, man is nothing but another animal. Man is nothing but an animal of a higher order. And so everything Charles Darwin taught about evolution as it applied to the history of the world.
Well, because they thought that it was perfectly acceptable to, promote survival of the fittest in the animal kingdom. So they wanted to make the leap to the human race and say that applied as well.
Exactly.
That's what they wanted to do. That's why you had to have that book first to lay the groundwork, and then you could leap over into
The
humans are the
descent of
same.
man.
They're just animals.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mhm.
What's the favorite thing about that you hear abortionists say? Well, it's not human till after it gets here. When you're talking about a baby in the womb, it's not human. How many videos you want to see of people interviewing abortion protesters? And that's what they say. Where'd they get that from? They're not human until they're born. If they're not human, you don't have to worry about them. Well,
Well,
just
that doesn't help their actual argument from a common sense standpoint, because even if they only and I don't agree with that, but even if using their own argument they became human the moment they were born, then why would you still put forward this survival of the fittest races thing each person who was born. They have to actually make a leap to say that these people are not even of the human race. So there
Sweetie,
comes in your evolution to say they've not evolved to the point of actually being a human.
sweetie, this became established, settled science in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Let me get you there. Let me try to find it. This came out of Scientific American. Scientific American. They had an article and
It
it said
says
the personal
August 17th, 1907 at the bottom.
1907. The personal
Mhm.
appearance, characteristics, and traits of the Congo pygmies conclude they are small, ape-like, elfish creatures. This was so common. This is the way. If you were not white, this is the way you
Elfish creatures, not human beings.
exactly.
Elfish creatures. They weren't human. Yeah.
How many of y'all have seen that drawing right there?
Yeah. Everybody.
Everybody. It's in
Everybody.
all the science books.
I
All
think they
the
have it on T-shirts they wear it on the Big Bang Theory.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Now look, you
Scientists.
start off with a slumped
If
over.
you're smart, you believe this.
Well,
You know,
and yeah,
that was what I'm being sarcastic. I mean,
well
that's
look,
what's put out there.
you wait till I show you what the intellectuals of the day believed and were so confident of it, they had no problem putting it in writing. It ended up in one of the most popular high school textbooks in America in the 19 teens and 20s. But look here, wait a minute, let's don't leave that. Here's how it works.
Okay.
Quick. Okay.
Give up.
Wherever mankind that you see in the world today, whichever one they look closest to in this drawing, what that means is that's as far as they evolved and they didn't get any further. So if you look like the fourth one from the left, okay, well there you are. If you made it to the third from the left, which is Aborigines in Australia and the natives in Africa, and then the ones on the right, well, those might have been some Polynesians or whatever. Okay. And then to the right, well, those were all the Europeans and Americans. That's literally what they were teaching. That's what gave them the excuse. And that's why Christians were the only ones that were offended by this diagram. And yet this diagram showed up in every science book from the late 1800s to even today.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Charles Darwin writing in 1868. The support which I receive from Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail. Now, does that
Germany. Get there. Go ahead. Get there.
1868.
Mm-hmm.
The war of annihilation is a natural law without which the organic world could not continue to exist at all. This is a German zoologist in 1870. The war of annihilation, meaning extermination.
Mm.
Just as in nature, the struggle for existence is the moving principle of evolution and perfection, so also in world history, the destruction of the weaker nations through the stronger is a postulate of progress. This is a German ethnologist in 1875. Where does that come from? Charles Darwin, Origin of Species. Charles Darwin, Descent of Man. That's where it comes from. According to Darwin's, and they make a direct reference to Darwin. According to Darwin's theory, wars have always been of the greatest importance for the general progress of the human species. The physically weaker, the less intelligent, the morally lower must give place to the stronger. German biologist. German biologist. This is a scientist. 1893. Now, everybody knows about the Holocaust, World War II. The Holocaust of World War II was not the first genocide. The first genocide occurred in what what is now known as Namibia, but it was known then, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, before World War I, as the German colony of Southwest Africa. The German military and scientific community literally took Namibia, at the time had a different name, and took it and basically made it into their scientific laboratory. And I don't mean in a good
This
way.
is horrific. It's horrific. Okay.
The average German here looks upon and treats the natives as creatures being more or less on the same level as baboons. These are Christian missionaries.
Just reporting back on what's going on there.
Right.
They're just reporting back. They're not agreeing with it. They're saying, look, these people over here are treating these people like they're on the same level as a monkey.
Now, this guy, this John Bridgman, is an anthropologist, historian at University of Washington in the United States, and he has basically studied the genocide of the Germans against the native tribes in Namibia. And this is what he says, and he takes some of this from the missionaries. The average German looks down upon the natives as being about on the same level as the higher primates, baboon being their favorite term for the natives, and treats them like animals. Folks, we've spared you the videos, we've spared you the photographs, but
I was hoping you weren't going to show those.
Yeah. But they did it under the guise and the auspices and the firm belief that they were scientifically justified in what they were doing.
I mean, they did things like they starved them. Pictures, think of the Holocaust, those kind of pictures. But then they shipped their skulls back to be studied. They would.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pictures. There's just so much.
All right. Now here is the German general who was in charge of the German military in the colony of German West Africa. And this is what he writes. At the outset, we cannot do without the natives, i.e. for hard labor, but they finally have to melt away. Where the climate allows the white man to work, philanthropic views cannot banish Darwin's law of survival of the fittest. That is evolution in action right there. Now, this is the guy who put all the machinery in place to exterminate over 80% of one tribe and 20% of another tribe before World War I. And they thought they were doing it perfectly okay. The only people who were complaining about it were the Christian missionaries. Here's an article from New York Tribune, 1924. I got to look at that. Missing links with mankind in early dawn of history have been found. Stone Age men living on an unfrequented island in the Antarctic have been discovered by an Australian scientist who may be able to shed much light upon some of the greatest problems now confronting anthropologists.
That looks like 1921. Not sure.
It said 24. New York
Oh, it was at 24? Okay.
February 10th, 1924. Folks, this was mainstream. This was mainstream. Now, this is, get to that one. This is the book. Yes, this is the book. This is the textbook that was being promoted. And if my information is right, this is the textbook that was fought over in the Snopes trial. Okay? The Races of Man. And the title of that book is A Civic Biology Presented in Problems. The races of man. At the present time, there exist upon the earth 5 races. The highest type of all, the Caucasians, represented by the civilized white inhabitants of Europe and America. And here's what it goes on to say. Undoubtedly, there once lived upon the earth races of men who were much lower in their mental organization than the present inhabitants. The beginning of civilization were long ago, but even today, the earth is not entirely civilized. Well, that's a statement straight out against the biblical worldview. Biblical worldview says we're all of what we see and feel and experience is approximately 6,000 years old. Well, if Adam and Eve were the progenitors of all of humankind, there wasn't a lot of change and adaptation that had to take place. Now, some of it did, okay, variations, but that's the way evolution was. I mean, the same arguments for, snakes were still snakes, shrimp were still shrimp, fish were still shrimp, cows were still cows. Okay, it goes. The same argument is for man. Man is man. What they were saying is when you talk about ancient times, 300, a million years of human evolution, that's what you hear from scientists. Well, these kinds of ideas were perfectly acceptable. Well, where in the heck do you think those ideas came from? Straight from hell. It goes on to say this. I'm talking about this textbook, this 1914 textbook that was adopted for public school use in this country, said, if the stock of domesticated animals can be improved, it is not unfair to ask if the health and vigor of the future generations of men and women on the earth might not be improved by applying to them the laws of selection, meaning survival of the fittest. Pick the best. You talk to a cattle raiser, he talks about, picking, breed stock, males and females, trying to breed into the offspring good traits and breed out bad traits. Well, that's what this textbook in 1914 was saying. We can do the same thing with humankind. Eugenics. When people marry, there are certain things that the individual as well as the race should demand. Feeble-mindedness are handicaps which is not only unfair but criminal to hand down to posterity. The science of being well born is called eugenics. This is still out of that 1914 textbook for public school students in the United States of America. Hundreds of families such as those described above exist today, spreading disease.
Read the title.
Yeah, parasitism and its cost to society.
Like saying they're parasites.
Exactly. Yeah. Undesirables. We need to breed out the undesirables. We need to make sure the undesirables can't breed any more undesirables. Hundreds of families such as those described above exist today, spreading disease, immorality, and crime to all parts of this country. They take from society, but they give nothing in return. They are true parasites. Textbook, United States, 1914. This was taught in our public schools in this country, people. And it was based on Charles Darwin's
Darwinism
theory of evolution. It was given, some attractive names like social Darwinism, biological Darwinism. If such people were lower animals, we would probably kill them off to prevent them from spreading. Humanity will not allow this, but we do have the remedy of separating the sexes in asylums or other places and in various ways preventing intermarriage and the possibility of perpetuating such a low and degenerate race. Remedies of this sort have been tried successfully in Europe and are now meeting with some success in this country. Does that not make you sick?
Yeah.
And what's it based on? Natural selection, survival of the fittest. Weed out the worst, keep the worst from reproducing. Charles Darwin's version of evolution. The law of selection exists in the world, and the stronger and healthier have received from nature the right to live. Woe to anyone who is weak, who does not stand his ground. He may not expect any help from anyone. Who said that?
Hitler. Adolf Hitler. But you can see, Keith, just in Germany, how this book spawned all these thought thought processes in these Germans and how it got so prevalent. And
So
then
how,
here's Hitler comes along, right place, right time. He
if
just fell
you
right in with it, and it really justified so much of what he did in his mind.
so here we are in today's society. You are challenged. Do you have a biblical worldview or do you have a secular worldview? Well, I just showed you the evidence of what happened when supposedly very smart thinkers, the smartest thinkers of the day, these were the intellectuals. These were the ones who held the strings to government. These are the ones that the government officials listened to. These were the intellectuals. These were the ones with college degrees.
I mean, you haven't even touched on Margaret Sanger
No,
and how she perpetuated these abortion clinics in
if
the
you read the,
neighborhoods of minorities because she was
yes,
trying to eliminate
she was trying to
a
eliminate,
lower race.
exactly.
That's what she said.
Exactly. Anybody, that woman was so unbelievably racist, it wasn't even funny. But now here's the thing. What do you see today? You don't see anybody talking about Margaret Sanger being racist, but
No.
you still have Planned Parenthood. You know, the genocides that took place in the, what the heck's abortion? I mean, the Democrats want the ability to kill born alive children just because that's what the mother wants. Folks, it's all based on the settled science. You must believe the science. Well, this is the science of evolution. And this is how we got to where we are today. Hitler didn't show up in a vacuum. Margaret Sanger didn't show up in a vacuum. Planned Parenthood and abortion didn't show up in a vacuum. It didn't get dropped here from some spaceship. It started with Charles Darwin, who knew he was going against God when he wrote what he wrote. And he was hoping he would find allies, and he did. Well,
Evil's always going to find allies.
they're ready made. You got
Yeah.
a bunch of angels that rebelled and all their demons.
Oh,
So,
goodness.
Okay, we went a little over, but I'm sorry. But I told you it's going to be hard hitting.
I knew I needed to do something short tonight, so I'm glad I did, and I'm glad you brought that. And that's something we need to have out there more and not be afraid to talk about because the truth is the truth.
Oh, and
Darwin's not ashamed of anything he wrote. So
yeah, we're going to post a video for y'all that it's one of many, but this guy is really, really good, and he covers a lot of what I talked about. Now, he doesn't have the quotes. I had to go dig for the quotes and find the quotes and find where they were published and make slides out of them. But we'll post a video, may post two. But folks, this is why I told you I made excellent grades in school. I could, oh my gosh, school was easy for me.
but you were told in school that if you were of a higher intellectual, mind, that you would reject those backward,
Oh yeah, the
ways
Christians
of
were made.
interpreting the Bible, but that was just backward.
Do y'all know when the last human zoo was done away with in the United States? Y'all know when that was?
Are you talking about like circus stuff? Like
No, I'm talking about having a zoo where you have orangutans, chimpanzees, rhesus monkeys, etc., and you are displaying an African native or an Aboriginal native as part of your zoo.
wow.
As the quote missing link. You know when the last one of those was done away with in the United States?
I didn't know there was such things, but when was it?
1950s.
Oh my gosh.
1950s, they still had one.
I'm
Now,
not surprised.
they had a guy that was put on display at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904, I believe. And then they moved him after the World's Fair was over. They moved him to the Bronx Zoo. They literally had a display. He was part of the primate exhibit.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
And he was owned by 4 avowed, well-known, well-published evolutionists. Okay. And one of those evolutionists, you got to remember now, we're talking about 1890 something and 1904 and in the 19 teens. This is after slavery had been abolished in the Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation. They owned this guy. One of those 4, the books he wrote, Hitler said that guy's book was his, quote, Bible.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I hope, Keith, that we're not always trying to stir something up, but I hope we did. I hope we did stir something up here. I hope that we got somebody's attention and they dig deeper and they understand this, and we need to pass this along. This doesn't need to, go unsaid. Doesn't need to go unsaid. And we got to get out of here.
Yep. I'm going to leave you with one challenge. You're either going to, God is not going to let you ride the fence much longer. You're going to have to decide, do I believe a biblical worldview or do I not? I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. And have a Berean spirit. Go look and see if what we said is true. Look it up for yourself. That's what we want to inspire in people. And we're glad to be back 2026 and
see everybody next week. Love y'all.
Yep, there you go.